Marketing your business is a challenge for all of us. I think that we spend so much time and energy sort of envisioning this business that we want and then trying to put all the bricks into place to build the business that we want. But then once we arrive there, and that day does come, if it hasn't come for you yet, at some point you get to a place where you're like, yep, I am ready. I'm ready for the floodgates to open. And then the work of dragging those floodgates open and hoping for a flood begins, and that work never ends. I have this conversation over and over again. I've had this conversation with countless photographers, many of them here on this show, where we've talked about our particular sort of approach or tricks, things that we do that help our marketing, that help us develop our voice and our brand and our communication style. All of those things come into play. But the conversation that I'm having today with Bobbi Barbarich is unique. At least it's unique in the lineup of shows that I have ever brought your way before. So in 270 plus odd episodes, you've not heard anything quite like this. And I think that that is a wonderful thing. Bobbi is a documentary wedding and family photographer. She has been in the business for more than 15 years. And as amazing as her portfolio is, I think what really draws me to today's conversation is her ability to point out why it's not necessarily the quality of the photos that she's showing, but the voice behind the photos, the values that she's expressing through the photos that she's sharing that have allowed her to connect with her ideal clients and then get them to book at essentially any price. And now that's something that she teaches through her podcast and through her coaching program. She's been able to help other photographers do the same thing, which that's really what we're all here to learn, right? How can we take what's working for someone else and apply that to our own business in a way that is true to us? So get out your pens and notebooks. Today's conversation is full of some really fun metaphors and also great gold nuggets.
Welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. My name is Anami Tonkin, and I help photographers run profitable, sustainable businesses that they love. Each week on the podcast, I cover simple, actionable strategies and systems that photographers at every level of experience can use to earn more money in a more sustainable way. Running a photography business doesn't have to be that hard. You can do it, and I can show you how.
Bobbi Barbarich, welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. I am so excited to have you on the show. We had such a fun conversation the last time that we talked, and now I feel like I owe it to my audience to share you with them. So welcome to This Can't Be That Hard. For anybody who is meeting you for the first time here over the air, can you do us the favor of an introduction? Tell us where you are, what your the short version of your story is, and we'll start from there.
Yes, it's very long. I am a documentary photographer and coach. I live in Nelson, BC, British Columbia, in Canada. And I've been doing this for about 15 years. I started coaching a few years ago. I have a podcast as well, the Tilt and Shift Photography Business Podcast, which you have graced us with as
Such
a guest.
A good one. Yeah.
It was very fun. Yeah, that's a very, very short version. That's like my elevator pitch, though, is I document the joy and human connection for unbridled spirits.
Love that. Oh, we could do a whole show on the elevator pitch, or like the one-liner, the tagline, the whatever, whatever language one wants to use. I think that being able to condense what you do and what makes what you do special, saying I'm a photographer is in its own way can be a hurdle for people, but then getting past that and hooking people in, because there are a lot of photographers around these days, and being able to convey and distill sort of your own special secret sauce into something that people can kind of latch onto. Yeah. I feel it's more important than people give it credit for.
Yeah, I deeply believe in it, because once you have that, and it's something that I teach in Storyteller School, which is my group mentorship program. We spend 6 weeks coming up on it, because it also becomes a North Star. It becomes everything is distilled down into this maximum of 10 words. And it just gives you kind of laser focus on what you're doing. And it helps you zero in on your marketing and how you're talking to your ideal client, what you're sharing. If it doesn't fit into that elevator pitch, it shouldn't necessarily be forefront in how you're trying to reach people, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Preaching to the converted.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is, photography is one of those things that everyone is aware of. Everyone is a consumer of photography if you have the gift of sight. And I don't want to exclude anyone here. But we're all bombarded with photographs all the time. We, generally speaking, have a sense of like, I am drawn to this. I am not drawn to this. And I'm saying we, from the perspective of our clients.
Yeah.
Most people who are not professional photographers or who don't spend a ton of time like sort of more intentionally consuming photography don't necessarily have language to describe what it is that they're drawn to. So when we give them that language, it allows them to, it's almost like it builds that instant connection and an authority where they're like, yes, you've totally said exactly what I want. Which can be it's a weird, like very tiny thing on our end that can really grab people, especially if what you're describing isn't run of the mill. I'm all about when everybody else is zigging, you gotta zag.
Gotta zag. Gotta go where the air is clear.
Yeah.
Right. One of my coaches said that to me once. I was like, yeah, why would I want to be suffocating? Have you ever, okay, here's a random question. Have you ever done a triathlon?
No.
Okay.
I'm not an athlete.
So I've also never done one, but I've seen lots of them.
Oh, I've seen people exercise. Yeah. They look, like they're sweating a lot.
When they go into like the quagmire of the swim portion and they all jump in. That's what photography kind of feels
Piranhas
like right now.
is what they look like.
But like, it's really, this is terrible. So in the Ironman, they're swimming for a really long, like, I don't even, it's like miles. And you're in this fray of ocean water and like people are kicking and feeling like you're getting hit. I'm imagining because like just seen underwater footage of this and like people are like getting sick because you're nervous and you had to eat all this food before you started. And to a certain extent, I sort of feel like that's what you wade into. You've trained for this. You've become this photographer. You're like, yes, I'm doing this. And you're like, I'm prepared. And then you get into the swim and you're like, oh, whoa, I just swam through someone's chuck. Like, this is not what I expected.
That is literally the best visual representation I have ever heard of like the oversaturated market. Okay. Well, it's been a great show. Thanks so much for coming on. And mic drop. Oh my God. Amazing. Yeah, it really does feel that way sometimes. Yeah. And, not just sort of like the ick factor, but just I feel like I'm getting kicked in the face all the time. Yeah, it's so crowded. So maybe enter the pool or the lake or the whatever on the far shore or try to swim to where you've got some free space. Such good advice. But and that is hard because of course, I'm going to continue your metaphor here. Yeah. If everybody's swimming this way, you're like, that must be the fastest way to the finish line. I'm going to go that way. Exactly. What do they know that I don't know? And so it requires a certain amount of fortitude and sort of confidence to decide, you know what, even if it's a bit longer of a path or, somebody might look and say she's going the wrong way, I'm going to do this because I believe in it. And that can be hard.
Yeah. And the patience too, right? Yeah. Of like trusting that this path that you're taking is going to get you where you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Ugh, so good. Okay. So I'm going to bring it back to the fact that we've gotten a bit off topic, folks. I'm going to cast my line into that lake and pull you back over. Your background, your specialty, what you coach in, everything sort of comes down to this. And what I love about this conversation is that I spend a lot of time speaking with the expectation that the people listening have a solid grasp on their sort of photographic voice and certainly their ability to make photographs. Not because I think that everyone out there is like a super experienced hyper, everything is perfect in their photography, but just because that's sort of that my zone of genius is like systems, and let's get organized and let's make the back end of your business run so well that you don't have to think about it, so you can focus on the photography part.
Yeah.
What I love is that you are a business coach, but one of the things that you really focus on is this finding a more intentional photographic voice and viewpoint. And as you said, putting language to that so that you're making decisions through that lens. Talk a little bit more about how you came to feel that way, and then how you came to teach about that.
Well, I believe that we can only teach from a place of what we've struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I finally figured this out, I was like, oh, okay. I bet other people have struggled with this as well. And maybe they learn things in the same way that I do. So for the first 7 years probably of my business, I was really trying to do things the way everyone else was doing, because I thought that that's
Sure.
why they were, I mean, this is the same story that I think all of us kind of have in the beginning, but I'm a very slow learner. So my trajectory was a very flat curve for a long time. And I could feel like this growing frustration of, this is not, people don't get me. And it was because I wasn't getting myself, and I wasn't figuring out how to project that. And I didn't have the confidence to do it. And so then after that kind of period of time, and I just was ready to I considered going to med school. I was ready to absolutely drop it. I'll take one more stab at it. And I just didn't care. I had nothing to lose. I was ready to exit. And then I just started showing the stuff. Originally, I called it open mouth smile. I would only show pictures where someone had an open mouth smile. And that started something. That started people would be like, oh, I really love this. I love your candid photos. I'm like, oh, hey, there's something happening here. And so then I started digging into, oh man, there's so many, it's like a spider web when I get in terms of how I came to where I am. But what I recognized when I was sharing the images that made me have an open mouth smile, it brought people to me who wanted to feel the same thing. And so then I wanted to dig a little deeper into that. I'm like, okay, so why am I so attracted to this? Because we can be attracted to something, but if we don't consciously know it, it always just kind of operates under the surface, and then you can't replicate it. I didn't understand why this was happening. So how can I continue doing this? And I was working in the hospital at the time. I was working in academia as a dietitian, and I walked into a room, and the mom was cuddling her 16-year-old daughter. She had anorexia, and they were sitting on the bed. And I dropped my chart because it was such a shocking scene to me. I'd never seen that before. That closeness between a mom and her teenage daughter who was really ill, and well, not even the ill part, just that closeness. And then I kind of gathered myself and walked out of the room, and I'm like, okay, that was weird that I had that reaction. That says something about me, not them. And my first reaction was like repulsion is a strong word, but it made me feel like it repelled me. I was not comfortable with what I was seeing. It didn't seem normal. And so I'm like, that is weird. That's unsettling that I feel like that. And I had a family shoot a couple of days later, and I was like, maybe I need to look for that. Maybe I need to look for connection or genuine interaction between people. And so I just kind of started allowing the family to just do what they did. And I was very intentionally looking for the thing that made me feel a bit weird. And then I realized you can't make that stuff happen, or I couldn't. And there's certainly photographers who can create that atmosphere where that happens. But I I just started this kind of crusade of like trying to understand human relationships. And that's why my brand bio is, I document the joy in human connection, because I am fascinated by how people connect and how they show that. And then I realized I had all these like biases about what affection should look like, or like what I was expecting it to look like. So then it kind of evolved from there into me just being openly curious about creating images that reflected their family language. And when I say family, I am including weddings in that, because for me, weddings are just family photos. You know, they're not like you're wearing nice clothes and that's it. Whereas I think people often see them quite differently, but from a documentary perspective, they're very much the same. And so then I just started looking for those things that satisfied my curiosity about how people come together, right? So like I'm a really big picture thinker. Like I'm someone who flies at 30,000 feet all the time. And I could use a little more time in the weeds probably, but I think a lot of us get really lost in the weeds and we can't see the big picture. So I'm like, that is my strength. I'm the person that, if we're going back to the triathlon metaphor, I can see the finish line from very far away, and I'm very comfortable finding my own way to get there. And so maybe I can help people figure that out. And so I started really like honing in on the role that values played in my work. And I experimented with that. And I realized whenever I show photos that really speak to my values, when I'm very, very strict with myself about that, then it draws in my ideal client. So I had to define who my ideal client was. And then I had to figure out, how do I communicate with that person? Because in whatever way you communicate is how that person comes to you. And so when I started applying that into my actual, like my value structure then, and showing images that like literally show the value of connection or adventure, which is why I say unbridled spirits, then it's just so much more clear. And so I teach it from a perspective of, so, I mean, very enriching. This was a big journey of mine. It like blew my mind on so many levels. And that's kind of why my podcast is about, like kind of mind-blowing moments where you're like, oh, I have to do it this way because this is what I've gone through to get here. And so how I came to coach it is because I just believe it works so well for me. I'm like, this has to work for other people, but distilling it down in branding and how to brand it, how to market your values. And as in photography, that's what we're selling. We're selling our values, right? Or people are attracted to our values. So when I had that realization, it changed everything.
Yeah. Okay. So
sorry, that was really
I should have been writing them down because I've got like 1,000 questions. So you were saying you were like at kind of that wit's end. This isn't working. I'm not really getting what I thought I was going to get out of this career. What other things can I do? And it is funny how that's not an uncommon thread for people, where it's like they finally get to the point where they're like, well, whatever. And it's the stuff that they show then that starts to actually resonate with people. Yeah. I love that. And I feel like that is its own lesson. But what was the reaction that told you, wait a minute, something is different here? Was it just that people were starting to respond more on social media? Were you actually getting calls about this? Like, how did that play out?
It was this response. My social media following is pretty small, but they're I know they're there and they react consistently. Right. And the more I jumped into it, the more I was very consistent on that brand bio, the more I like stuck with it. It was, okay, this is really woo woo, but the people, they found me. They just came out of the woodwork or wherever they were lurking with their phones or searching on Google. And when they see it, they're like, yes, this is what I've been looking for. So the connection, like it was almost a warm lead immediately, rather than it being this, hey, we're getting married. Like, can you send us your pricing? Like my clients never ask that. They're like, they tell me their life story and then we meet, like, and those are my people. And I had to, when they come, I know they're there. And that only started happening when I was like, I am showing this photo that is not flattering to anybody, but you can feel exactly what's going on in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about how that ties in. Okay. So you told the story about walking into this patient's room and she and her mother were having this moment, and it was almost disturbing to you because you had this reaction, this sort of visceral reaction.
Yeah.
And then immediately after that, you were talking about how your values were then dictating the photos that you were choosing to both make and share.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the intersection of those two sort of seemingly disparate stories or facts.
Well, the disparateness is me owning my personal story. So your personal story is your money-making magic. So if you can figure out what it is, and this is what I teach in Storyteller School, if you can figure out the threads in your life that have led you to see things in a certain way, the reason people will come to you because they're looking for those same threads. It's familiar and it solves a problem for them. Because they're like, here's this person that I trust, which is a critical element of marketing, right? I trust this person because I feel like they've been through the same stuff that I have. And so if you can harness that, if you can go through a lot of this is stuff that we grappled with as kids into early teens, you were learning skills and communication methods that helped you manage difficult scenarios, right? And that creates our neural pathways. And when you consciously figure that out, what happened to you, like how you overcame challenges when you were younger, when you can consciously figure out what skills there were that you developed through that, you apply them to your business, and that attracts your clients because they have either that struggle or those challenges are familiar to them, or they are looking for someone that can help them to manage their own, which is a little kind of like a little bit of a slide into like psychology, but I mean, that's what selling is, right? And that's what art is.
So much.
There's such a deep intersection. So, okay, this is a kind of funny story. So I started formulating this like during the pandemic, 2021, how I kind of see the world. And I came to this realization that we come to the world with something, like we're here for a reason, I believe. And the crap we go through as a kid helps us so like we come to this world with a gift, a reason, a gift, a superpower. We go through some shite and we learn how to use that gift. Like that is how we survive those things. That's how we digest those things. That's how we get through them. And then, especially if you're an artist or a creative, and I kind of would argue that everybody is, that's what you give away as an adult. If you've healed from those things, you now have this ability to share it and to give it away. And photography, it's such a beautiful way to give back through the things that you've learned, right? So my theory is you're given a gift when you get here, you go through these trials to learn how to use the gift, and then as an adult, you give it away. Wouldn't you know? I thought I started made this up. A couple of years ago, I saw a quote on Instagram that Picasso said virtually the exact same thing.
Amazing.
So I don't know if I had read that somewhere and then I digested it, or if I'm on the same wavelength as Picasso. I don't know.
That's not the worst person to have a connection with as an artist.
But yeah, it seems like a valid theory, Yeah. And it definitely, seeing my students come out of this, it's kind of those, I wouldn't necessarily call them epiphanies, because sometimes epiphanies can come, you have this big realization, and then the dopamine goes away. It's more of a confirmation of familiarity of something that you've kind of known your whole life. And now you have the tools to be able to use it in your art and in your business.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you get a killer brand bio out of it.
I bet that it sounds like I would love to do that exercise with you just for kicks almost. I mean, I love doing that sort of thing. So talk to me about, because as you're saying all of this, I can almost hear my past self and countless photographers that I have talked to over the years saying like, yes, yes, all of this. Yes. My values, what I, what the way that I see the world, da, da, da. And when someone comes to me and they connect with that and they want to work with me, but then they tell me it's too much money or blah, 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 then like, I just have to work with them. It's the fact that I think that a lot of photographers and artists in general get into business specifically because they are itching for a way to like give this gift that they have and ideally monetize it. But the higher calling is just to give it away. And I mean, to form those connections with people, to find those people who connect with the way that you see the world. And I'm not denigrating that sort of reaction because I think that it's a valid one. However, over time, I have come to understand that like you have to gird yourself about that sort of situation if you're going to be in business for any significant period of time.
Why do we have to gird ourselves?
I guess I say gird in that it requires a certain amount of fortitude to say, I'm going to make these connections with people who are also able not just to connect with me on sort of a values perspective, but also are financially in a position to make this a viable business. So how do you help your students navigate that? How did you, maybe that wasn't an issue for you, but.
It definitely was an issue because I was started to get these great clients and I wasn't living my life the way I wanted to. Like when people say that they have like 30 weddings a year, I'm like, what? Like that is unlivable. So in 2022, I think I had 26 weddings and like 14 families, and it was far, 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 far too much. And I was like, wait a minute, like I am not intentionally figuring out what I want my life to look like. And I think that is a step virtually all solo entrepreneurs, especially creatives, skip because we take whatever we can get. Oh, I love these people. They're the same as me. No. You still have to have very clear boundaries. And those boundaries come in the form of your pricing. And because your pricing is going to dictate how you live your life, right? If you're generally speaking, if you're lower in the market, you're going to attract price droppers. They're not necessarily going to be values aligned because they're first coming to you for price. But then when we move up into the mid-market, you're still competing with price and you are still attracting people. You're maybe attracting more people who are slightly more values aligned. But if you have the courage to figure out, okay, how much money do I actually want to make in a year? And this is a question that most people don't ask. They're like, oh, 6 figures. Like, what does that even mean?
Right. Or they come up with a round number that sounds good. That has no reality or basis in their own reality. Yeah. Or
whatever reality they're trying to create. Is what I would,
more important.
Would say, more importantly. So if you've never put that thought in, that is the single most important thing that you have to do. If you want to make $50,000, then you figure out how much do I want to work for this amount of money. If you want to make $50,000 and you want 10 weddings a year, each wedding is going to be $5,000. It's pretty simple. Like, and so many of us don't distill it down to that, like, well, how much money do I want and how much do I want to work? And so then when you have that number, you can reverse engineer and think like, okay, so right now I'm charging $4,000. What would it take for me to get to 5? What would I need to change in my business? And this is where we get into like the details in terms of communication and sales language and like valuing your work and being able to talk to people about money. That is so critical. We're so scared of talking about money. People email us and they're like, how much can we talk? And you're like, send them a price guide. I think it's so disconnected, you know, like you're asking me to come and like spend time in your home with your family. But I'm like embarrassed to like tell you how much this is going to cost.
Or like, I don't want to put you out to the extent of getting on the phone with me for 15 minutes, but you're going to have me come in and hold your newborn. Like, how does that how does that work?
Yeah, totally. It's all about
I'm right
trust,
there
right?
with you. Yeah.
Yeah. Each of these steps requires so much trust, and people are not going to trust you if you don't trust yourself. Like one of my students, we did like a practice sales call, and
Mm-hmm.
she kept like inflecting on like it's 7,500. Like,
Yep.
like
Yep.
no, like you have, like they're not going to value it if you don't value it, right? And I once had a student that said like, well, I feel like I'm ripping them off. Well, that is the
That's
issue.
problem
Is
number one.
you don't value
Yeah.
what you are putting out there. And
Yeah.
that comes into a whole bunch of like self-work that we have to do to be able to understand this is what I need to live.
Yeah.
I'm worthy of this life that I want. And what skills do I need in order to create that in my business?
Yeah. I think that there's like levels of, I'm going to go back to swimming in the lake.
Okay.
And I don't doubt that I'm going to continue to go back to that in my mind and probably speak about it for the rest of my time on earth. The idea that there comes that point, you're swimming with the giant pack, you're like surrounded by people and mess and it's awful, the fray, you're in the fray.
Yeah.
And you make that decision, like, I'm going to strike out. I'm going to do this other thing.
Yeah.
And the next hurdle, the next sort of danger that you come across when you strike out is this sense of, I'm going to do it. But as soon as I'm out there, the first thing that I want is validation.
Yeah.
And I want someone to tell me, like, I love you. I connect with you. I see you. So when you find that person, even if that's the only thing that is right about it is that they see what you see, you can get stuck in the mud over there. I mean, it's like, it's a different trap, but it's also a trap. Anyway.
Well, I think you hit on it very importantly. You said you're looking for validation, and that is bullshit. Like validation, I mean, we all feel it. Yeah. And validation can only come from us. Like validation is for parking. I went through a big like,
oh man, I love that.
Yeah. There's a book. I can't say, I think it's called Validation is for Parking, and it's for artists that like, you've got to stay the course. You've got to choose the path that you want to be on monetarily, artistically. We cannot look to others to tell us that what we're doing is right or wrong, or that other people are approving of what we're doing, because you have to believe in it yourself.
Yeah.
And then present it to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I joke a fair amount about that old skin bracer, like the old aftershave commercial with, and I can't even think of the actor's name, but it was where he like smacked it on his skin. He was like an old cowboy type. Okay. He goes, confidence is very sexy. Like, and I joke about that. I mean, that was on when I was like a little kid. And most of the time when I talk about it, people are like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I've tried to find it, and it's so old that like you can barely find it on YouTube. It's around. Somebody out there listening knows what I'm talking about.
Link it in the show notes.
But exactly. But the idea is that it is like confidence is a magnetizing force. Yeah. And so we can all go through all the motions of like building a beautiful website and establishing a brand voice and all this other stuff. But if we haven't done the work on the inside and come to believe in what we're selling and the prices that we've put on that and everything else, it really does have a very hard time gaining purchase.
Yes. And you can't sell it. You know, what's funny? So the group mentorship course that I have now is called Storyteller School, but it used to be called, my first rendition was called The Confident Photographer. It flopped because people don't want to believe that they're not confident.
Right.
But that is what underpins all of this. Confidence to follow your voice, confidence to change your pricing structure, confidence to sell albums, like all of it. It all comes down to how you feel about yourself and whether you believe that. So I had to change the name and like add some bonuses, and now like, but that is that's really
like hotcakes. Yeah. Oh man. Oh, that's so good. Bobbi, I feel like I didn't even get to like quite dive into everything that we planned on diving into. It's not surprising because I feel like that's the way our other conversations have gone as well. But there's so much value in everything that you have shared. I'm just excited to have you back. But I do want people to have the opportunity to see a little bit more about what it is that you teach and how you are able to connect this, like, what your values are, what your vision is to your marketing and your branding and the way that you kind of put that all together. So let everybody know where they can find you, where they can learn a little bit more about how you do what you do.
So on Instagram, my podcast is Tilt and Shift Podcast. And I have 3 Instagram accounts. And my family account is Documentary Family Photo is my Doc Fam one, but most of my coaching stuff I put onto my wedding account, which is Barbarich Photo.
Love it.
My coaching website is bobbibeducation.com. And in August, I'm going to Storyteller School runs once a year. It's usually in the winter, so people can sign up for the wait list for that through my website. But in August, I'm going to release a 5-video course on documentary photography, like storytelling, so that people can help start to understand the difference, like how we educate our clients. Mm-hmm. I mean, our brand educates our clients, if people didn't realize that, but the purpose of your business is to educate your client why they should hire you. And part of the language that we use to describe ourselves, we have to be very careful of buzzwords and because we're in this fray, we're all swimming around this lake, and we're all kind of using the same words for things that aren't necessarily what we're providing. And I think we're doing it like without any sort of ill intention, but specifically documentary, candid, those words are kind of being used in interesting ways. And so this course really defines how to become a documentary photographer. So that's something that you are interested in. And it's a quick little 5-video course that people can use. But I'm going to give your listeners a little discount if they want it. And that'll drop in August.
Love it.
Put that in the show notes. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, we'll share that. I will put it in the show notes and we'll send it out in that week's email as well. So if you're not on the email list, get on the email list. Bobbi, it has been a pleasure as always. And I look forward to chatting again and again. You've got so much good insight and I just love sort of the view that you take on the industry and the way that artists need to be out there fighting for themselves. I love that your voice is part of this. So
thank you.
Thanks for coming and sharing it with me. And we'll talk next time.
All right. Thanks, Anna-May.
Have a great one.
Well, that's it for this week's episode of This Can't Be That Hard. I'll be back same time, same place next week. In the meantime, you can find more information about this episode, along with all the relevant links, notes, and downloads at thiscan'tbethatHard.com/learn. If you like the podcast, be sure to hit the subscribe button. Even better, share the love by leaving a review in iTunes. And as always, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic week.